I want to talk about scams in Indonesia, things you want to pay attention to when you are traveling to Indonesia. I know there are some guys who have never been to Indonesia and are planning to travel too. So I want to talk about 4 scams. There are more, but I want to talk about the 4, in my opinion, most important scams you have to pay attention to, which are occurring in Indonesia. The first one is ATM skimming. So before I talk about this, money, ATM, the changing money. So when I'm in Indonesia, I normally do not use actually, I can, because I have my bank, with my ATM card, I can pick up money in Indonesia without any fees, okay? So, but this is a rare exception. But normally for foreigners, for expats, for tourists, for travelers, you know, you have ATM cards from your home country, right? So it's very expensive to pick up cash in Indonesia with your foreign ATM card. You have to pay not only bank fees from your bank, but also the Indonesian bank, the Indonesian ATM where you pick up money from will charge you an additional fee. I mean, if you are okay with that, then no big deal, go ahead. It's convenient to pick up cash at the ATM machine, it's what you think. But I still would not advise to do that, especially in certain places, because also in Indonesia, I've heard especially in Bali, they do skimming. That means they attach a very small device in front of the slit where you enter your card. And this device basically is attached before the ATM card would enter the ATM machine. And this device is reading all the data from your card, and later this data can be taken and will be used for the replication of fake cards. This actually happened to me a long time ago when I was in Germany, about 20 years ago. I was in Berlin at the time. It was in 2005, I remember. At the time, apparently, skimming was a very popular practice amongst fraudsters and scammers in Germany. But anyway, but then I moved to New Zealand, you know, and once I was in New Zealand, after a few weeks, I received an email from my German bank telling me that I have an overdraft, you know, that I'm, you know, I'm in debt, you know, and I said that cannot be, you know, I'm not even in Germany. And then my bank informed me there were suspicious transactions, you know, and actually, long story short, I blocked the account, and the money was reimbursed to me because the banks also are insured against these scams. And actually what happened, somebody, the guys who picked up money from my account, my bank account, that happened in Paris, in France. So people in Paris used a replica of my bank account and picked up money in Paris, in France, from my German bank account. But I was in New Zealand at the time, so I could clearly prove that I was not the one who picked up the money. And the same thing is going on also in Indonesia. It's happening. I hear about cases in Bali. So long story short, you want to still be careful if you use your ATM card in Indonesia. If you really want to use the card, then I strongly advise to only use ATM machines who are located inside of bank buildings. Avoid these ATMs who are located outside, on the road, on the street side, you know, like these freestanding ATMs you can sometimes find, everywhere actually, you know. Avoid these ATM machines. In my opinion, they are not safe, and the risk to be scammed is much higher. Only use ATM machines of famous local banks, you know, who are credible. The second thing, money changer. The second scam, money changers. So, okay. Now, if you don't want to use the ATM card, how do you get cash? How do you change money? So, one way is the money changer, yeah. But don't use these money changer you can find on the streets, you know. It happened to me in Bali a few months ago, but I was aware of the scam. So what is happening? You come with your US dollar or your Canadian dollar or your British pound or euro or Japanese yen, whatever currency you have, Korean won. And especially if you're a first timer in Indonesia, you are not aware of, you don't know the currency, you know, you are barely familiar with the exchange rate. You don't know how the bills look, you know, what kind of design they have. So anyway, if you give, let's say you want to change 200 US dollars, you hand over the money to this money changer, which is located also on the roadside, you know, in very little huts. You can't find them anywhere. Sometimes you are being approached by Indonesian guys who offer you to just change money. I'm talking Bali here, for example, you know. So, and you hand over your 200 US dollar, and then the guy will count the Indonesian money, and then he will also very quickly count it in front of you and then hand over the money. And the problem is they on purpose will give you less money than you're actually supposed to receive, you know. So what I did a few months ago, I was aware about that scam, you know. I was aware of that scam, so I counted the money, I recounted my money, I took the time. I simply did not just trust this guy. I recounted my money one by one, and I found out that he betrayed me of 50,000 Indonesian rupiah, which is about $3 US. But imagine now, 50,000 rupiah is a lot of money in Indonesia. That gives you already at least 1 or 2 meals, you know. Local meals. So imagine this guy has 20, 30 customers per day, and he always takes 50,000 rupiah from each customer. Yeah, you can do the math, you know. That's almost $100, right? 50,000 times 10 is 500. Yeah, it's about $100 he makes, you know. So there you go. This is the scam. This is what they do, you know. So if you really want to use money changers on the streets, count your money. Make sure you agree to the rate and use your own calculator. Use your smartphone, calculate the amount and double check. Otherwise, some of these guys might rip you off. Scam number 3 is actually obvious and common sense, but I will mention it again. Pickpockets, you know. Don't forget, you are in Indonesia. It's still kind of I don't want to say a third world country. It's not a third world country, but it's a developing country. It's a lot of poverty there in this country, and especially in touristy areas where there are a lot of tourists. So let's talk Bali, for example. Just beware. Use your common sense, switch on your brain, put on your thinking cap, and just don't run around like a gangster rapper loaded with gold chains and stuff. Yeah? Keep your valuables always close. Don't carry a lot of cash even inside your hotel room. Place your valuables inside a safe. A safety box. If you don't have a safety box, then make sure you keep them inside your suitcase, and make sure the suitcase is locked, you know, very important, because sometimes housekeeping stuff, you will not believe what's happening. You know, I worked in the hospitality industry for over 30 years, you know, and unfortunately I have to tell you that even in the hotels I worked before, we had issues with our housekeeping staff who stole money from our guests, from our guests. And because these guests made big noise, and then they went on these online platforms and you know, gave bad ratings and were complaining, and that was very bad for our image, very bad for the hotel image. You know, eventually we had to fire these people. Of course, we had to release them, we had to lay them off. because this was a criminal activity, so I know. And I worked in 5-star hotels, you know. So if this is happening in 5-star hotels, then you can imagine what's happening in 3, 2, or 1-star hotels. So always be vigilant. Don't leave your valuables lying around openly. Always lock them up, you know, and don't walk around with heaps of cash in your pocket. Yeah, that should be common sense. It's basically the same thing you wouldn't do in your home country, right? And point number 4 I want to make is taxi service. Yeah, so now these days, you know, you have these riding services available. In Indonesia, it's Grab and Gojek and Maxim. We have actually 3 riding services available. So these are very reliable. No need to use taxis. There's one taxi company I would recommend. It's called Bluebird. Bluebird is a very reliable taxi company. These cars have a blue color. They are blue-colored cabs. And this taxi company, I believe it's the biggest one in Indonesia, is very reliable. They go by the meter, so, and the fares they charge are very fair. I remember before there were these riding services, before there was Grab and Gojek and Maxim available in Indonesia about 10, 12, 13 years ago, I always used Bluebird and I never had any issues, you know. So if you want to use, if you need public transportation, if you want to use like a taxi, no need to use a taxi. Use these riding services, you know. We can download an app onto your smartphone and then you can do the booking and avoid private taxis. I mean, I might be wrong. Maybe these private taxi companies are safe these days because the competition now is very high. You know, before there were these riding services available, before Uber, for example, you only had taxi drivers, right? And they had the monopoly on dictating prices. And now time is over. It's very hard for the taxi drivers now, especially in Southeast Asia and also Indonesia, to make a living, right? Because the competition is much higher. But still, I don't use these private taxi drivers because, you know, they always try to make a buck. And, you know, I used to, I was ripped off a few times and I still don't trust them today. So this is my advice to you, to be on a safe side. Don't use any private taxis, just use these riding services. Or if you really want to use a taxi company, then I suggest you use Bluebird Taxi. So with that being said, that's it for today. That's my advice on 4 very common scams in Indonesia. But again, I want to mention at the end of this video that Indonesia is a very safe country overall and bottom line compared to other Southeast Asian countries, but still you have to be aware of certain forms of scams, like you have to be aware of certain forms of scams in your home country. Scams happen anywhere and everywhere, in any country. They happen in the United States, they happen in Germany, they happen in Japan, and so they happen in Indonesia. If you just apply your common sense and with these tips I gave you in this video, there shouldn't be any problems. So yeah, with that being said, I'm checking out for today and I'm gonna see you in one of my next videos.